If you earn an average salary, it would take you about 8 million years of nonstop work to match Elon Musk's net worth. And in the exact amount of time it took me to read that first sentence, he automatically generated another $100,000. But if you dig into history, you'll quickly find claims of ancient emperors and kings who supposedly possessed fortunes that make modern tech billionaires look completely broke. The problem with those claims is how they're calculated. You can't just take an ancient empire's landmass or a king's pile of gold, drop it into a modern digital inflation calculator, and expect a mathematically valid result. The economies simply don't translate. To find the actual richest human to ever live, we need to throw out the internet myths and run history's so-called trillionaires through a strict modern economic stress test. First on the chopping block are the conquerors. On paper, Genghis Khan's control of 20% of Earth's land area gives him an estimated net worth of $130 trillion. Augustus Caesar sits around 5 trillion based on Rome's economic output. But holding territory is very different from holding a bank account. Genghis Khan deliberately redistributed his war loot to his soldiers to maintain loyalty. He wore the same clothes as his men, slept in the same tents, and asked to be buried without a single marker. A much more recent example of this paradox is Joseph Stalin. He commanded a Soviet economy that would be worth $10 trillion today. Yet his personal finances were entirely separate from that national wealth. His pay stubs show a salary of about $30,000 a month, but he just let the checks pile up on his desk. He owned virtually nothing outside of his pipes, books, and a plain military tunic. Adolf Hitler generated millions in his personal accounts by copywriting his image for postage stamps and making himself tax-exempt. However, the $3 trillion in resources he commanded at his peak came strictly through violent military theft and forced labor. This brings us to the concept of liquidity. Liquidity measures how easily an asset converts into spendable cash. A dictator cannot liquidate their country's treasury or natural resources for personal use without risking immediate political collapse. Personal wealth requires separation from the state treasury. Because a dictator's command over trillions is inextricably tied to their political survival, it is disqualified as a private fortune. Next, we have the legendary kings known for hoarding literal physical gold, most notably Mansa Musa and King Solomon. The king of the Mali Empire, Mansa Musa, supposedly controlled half of the world's gold supply. During a famous pilgrimage across Africa, he handed out so much gold that he crashed local economies and had to borrow it back to fix them. King Solomon is similarly credited with collecting 666 talents of gold in annual tribute, giving him an estimated modern valuation of over $2 trillion. These estimates are built on second-hand testimony or religious texts written centuries after the fact. Without an independent audit or primary records, these figures remain in the realm of folklore. Economic reality requires data that does not rely on centuries-old hearsay. If the wealth cannot be quantified by direct evidence, it is a myth, not a net worth. The ancient kings are eliminated. Now we arrive at verifiable personal fortunes. If we judge strictly by physical cash, the Colombian cartel leader Pablo Escobar reached an inflation-adjusted net worth of $80 billion. But he quickly discovered the severe physical limitations of paper money. His operation had to spend $1,000 a week just on rubber bands to hold the stacks together, and rats routinely destroyed billions of dollars in buried bills. Long before Escobar, families like the Futhers and the Rothschilds solved this cash problem. They built international banking networks, financing wars, and locking their immense wealth in sovereign bonds and debt. Moving into the 20th century, Henry Ford shifted the formula again, building a $200 billion personal fortune through corporate equity and industrial scaling. Ford generated this wealth through his perfection of the automated assembly line. This system was so efficient that it dropped the manufacturing time of a Model T from 12 hours down to 90 minutes. Yet even with these massive, verifiable piles of personal capital, none of these men managed to surpass the single most dominant titan of the American industrial age. In the late 1800s, John D. Rockefeller systematically crushed his competition until Standard Oil controlled 90% of oil refining in the United States. When the Supreme Court eventually shattered Standard Oil into 34 separate companies, Rockefeller held on to shares in every new entity. Their individual stock values soared, making him the world's very first billionaire. By 1913, Rockefeller's wealth equaled 2% of the US GDP. Comparing that to today, Elon Musk's net worth represents 1.4%. But the US economy today is 22 times larger. Rockefeller commanded a larger slice of a vastly smaller pie. Because Elon Musk holds a liquid personal fortune within the largest global market that has ever existed, he comfortably surpasses Rockefeller in raw inflation-adjusted dollars. Ultimately, this mathematical reality points to a broader truth. The richest person in history is alive right now, simply because the entire world as a collective system is exponentially wealthier than it has ever been.